Hey, do you have a moment? I'd like to share a story with you. My story, from those youthful years full of dreams but also full of stumbles. Back then, I was just 24, young, full of energy, and I thought I had everything figured out, especially the law. But later I realized, there are things no school can teach you, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. My name is Elizabeth Montgomery. People used to call me Liz. In the late 1960s, being a woman in law felt like walking against the wind. It was tough. Suspicion was everywhere, and opportunities were scarce. But I didn't back down. I stepped into the profession with everything I had, believing that if I was good enough, I'd be accepted. But I soon found out that some doors didn't open because of who I was, but because of my last name, Montgomery, daughter of the well-known attorney Richard Montgomery. I'm not telling you this to complain. It's just that every fall taught me something. And if you're willing to listen, I'll keep going, so you can understand more about a journey, not just of a young female lawyer, but of a woman learning to rise from the heartbreaks that law books never warned her about. At first, our family life was very peaceful. But then tragedy struck, and my mother sadly passed away. She couldn't live to witness my professional journey. She passed away at a young age due to breast cancer. Medical treatments at that time were limited, with only a few options available. When my mother passed, I was still very young, but her absence profoundly impacted the person I became. Growing up without the nurturing love of a mother, I mostly relied on the strong example set by my father and the influence of my brother. My father, although very devoted, was also strict, and he carried the scars from the loss of my mother. Our home, though comfortable, always held a silence that only those who have experienced great loss can truly understand. My mother, sadly, didn't live to witness my professional journey. She passed away prematurely from breast cancer. Medical treatments were limited back then, leaving few options. I was still young when this happened, but her absence profoundly shaped the woman I became. Growing up without maternal tenderness, I relied heavily on my father's strong example and even my brother's influence. My father remained dedicated but serious, also bearing scars from my mother's loss. Our home, though comfortable, always held that distinctive silence only those who've experienced profound loss truly understand. I vividly recall entering that imposing building each day, determined to be more than just another professional. I wanted to transform lives, to make meaningful differences for those seeking my help. Civil law became my passion as I encountered people lost in personal turmoil, desperately searching for someone to guide them toward peace. These struggles resonated deeply, giving purpose to my exhausting schedule. Yet no one prepared me for the personal sacrifices this career would demand. My dedication to work gradually isolated me from meaningful personal connections. While watching friends marry and build families, I remained buried in case files and legal briefs. Journey back with me, and I'll reveal how everything began. But I must emphasize being a lawyer didn't shield me from life's deceptions. If my 85 years have taught me anything, it's that no degree protects us from the heart's vulnerabilities. In 1969, I embodied youthful idealism, believing I understood legal intricacies perfectly, yet remained utterly naive about matters of the heart. A painful lesson awaited me. Curiously, despite sharing a home with my father, we rarely connected meaningfully. Professional demands consumed us both, though in different spheres. He specialized in corporate law at another firm, creating an unintentional barrier between us. Our evenings together consisted of brief exchanges before retreating to separate spaces. Affection existed between us, certainly, but accompanied by a palpable distance. I also had an older brother, David, who had established his own family with his wife, Sarah, in another city. David had always been the more tranquil sibling, naturally drawn to domestic life and aspiration he achieved with relative ease. Their occasional family visits brought welcome vitality to our household, though such gatherings remained infrequent due to our demanding schedules. Stay with me now, because what I'm about to share will astonish you. I remember vividly my first encounter with Andrew. It happened purely by chance during one hectic morning. Having rushed from the office, desperately needing caffeine, I hurried into the Starbucks on the corner. Distracted by cascading thoughts, I absent-mindedly grabbed the first coffee cup from the counter and turned to leave, except it wasn't my order. A calm, slightly amused voice stopped me. "I believe you've taken mine." When I turned around, I found myself captivated by the most striking eyes I'd ever seen. Their blue depth seemed to penetrate beyond superficial facades, as if reading my innermost thoughts. More surprising than his arresting gaze was his reaction to my misdemeanor than showing irritation. His lips curved into a gentle smile, as if our mix-up were the most natural occurrence. The way he regarded me felt refreshingly different. It wasn't the evaluative stare I'd grown accustomed to from men trying to place me in professional hierarchies. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, leaving me uncharacteristically flustered. After years of navigating interactions with status-conscious colleagues fixated on titles and positions, Andrew's unassuming warmth caught me completely off guard. Later, when he mentioned he worked as a photographer for Life magazine, I found myself intrigued. His approach to life carried a refreshing simplicity, more focused on experiencing the world than proving himself within it. When we shared laughter over our coffee confusion, I experienced a momentary liberation from the constant weight of responsibility. In his presence, life suddenly felt lighter and less complicated. Though deeply immersed in my legal career at that time, barely noticing the world beyond case files, Andrew effortlessly reminded me that life extended beyond courtrooms and legal briefs. Our accidental meeting, sparked by a simple mistake, a smile, and a lingering glance, marked the beginning of something that would permanently alter my carefully structured existence. Our relationship evolved with both natural ease and unexpected depth. Following our initial coffee shop encounter, Andrew surprised me with an unusual proposition. "Would you let me photograph you sometime?" No obligations, completely complimentary. Though I laughed initially, thinking he couldn't be serious, I soon realized his genuine intent. While he thrived as a Life magazine photographer, I had never considered myself photogenic. My demanding legal schedule, filled with deadlines and casework, made such creative pursuits seem almost frivolous. Yet something about Andrew inspired me to step outside my rigidly professional mindset. His light-hearted approach to life, treating each moment as something to be savored rather than merely endured, gradually softened my resistance. Eventually, I consented. During our first photography session in a sunlit park, I discovered something unexpected about myself. Andrew's playful banter and gentle humor elicited genuine smiles I hadn't experienced in years. This stood in stark contrast to my typically tense, focused demeanor at work. Through his camera lens, he captured fleeting moments of authentic joy and unguarded expression. Each photograph seemed to invite me further from the protective shell my professional life had constructed around me. Curiously, Andrew began changing too. Despite his previously intensive work ethic, he started allowing himself more leisure and relaxation. We appeared to be influencing each other, creating a balanced dynamic between us. His working hours decreased as his appreciation for life's simple pleasures increased. Our outings grew more frequent: dinners at intimate restaurants, explorations of his favorite city spots, quiet walks through neighborhoods he wanted to share with me. His inherent joy illuminated every setting, making even ordinary moments feel significant. Being with him resembled taking refreshing breaths after years of recycled air. Andrew was a man of many layers, and like everyone with substantial life experience, carried a past he initially hesitated to reveal. At 7 years my senior, when we began knowing each other more intimately, he seldom discussed his previous life. An invisible barrier seemed to protect certain memories he wasn't yet prepared to share. Gradually, as trust between us strengthened, these walls began lowering. During an intimate dinner conversation, Andrew finally revealed his painful history. I listened with deepening empathy as he described his divorce and its devastating cause, his wife's infidelity. The raw anguish that crossed his features while recounting this betrayal etched itself permanently in my memory. He appeared to carry an enormous emotional burden, a profound sadness that refused easy resolution. According to Andrew, they'd had no children together, making the betrayal somehow more personal, directed solely at him. The details he shared were heartbreaking. Years of marital trust had disintegrated in an instant upon discovering the affair. My parents live in another city. He confided with a heavy sigh. I have a sister, Amy. I came here seeking a fresh start, a chance to rebuild. I'd heard photographers earned good money in this city. He explained that following the divorce, his parents had chosen to maintain their relationship with his ex-wife despite everything. In the late 1960s, divorce carried tremendous social stigma. His parents, concerned about family reputation and social standing, supported his ex-wife to avoid divorce-associated scandal, preferring to maintain appearances of family unity. Their betrayal extended beyond this practical choice. They also believed I acted hastily in ending the marriage, Andrew explained. To them, divorce represented personal failure and weakness. Rather than supporting my decision, they distanced themselves, making my transition even more isolating and painful. As I absorbed these revelations, I felt overwhelming compassion. Andrew suddenly appeared so vulnerable, abandoned, not only through marital betrayal but by his own family. I longed to somehow fill the emptiness these devastating events had carved within him. Andrew had relocated hoping for renewal. Though his sister Amy remained loyal, she continued living with their parents, maintaining strong family ties despite everything. What impressed me most was Andrew's courage, his ability to confront this dark chapter and still open himself to building something authentic and beautiful with me. Our relationship progressed steadily towards serious commitment, eventually reaching the milestone of Andrew meeting my father. I anticipated this moment with nervous energy, knowing my father's judgment carried significant weight in my decisions. Richard Montgomery, perpetually reserved and somewhat distant, received Andrew with polite formality that barely concealed his underlying reservations. What I immediately noticed was my father's skeptical assessment of Andrea, wariness that extended beyond Andrew's divorced status. Something in my father's expression conveyed deeper discomfort I couldn't immediately identify. Though Richard rarely verbalized his emotions, his silence communicated volumes. Divorce still carried heavy social judgment in that era, presenting a substantial issue in my father's eyes. Beyond this, he seemed troubled by Andrew's complicated background coming so close to his daughter's carefully constructed life. Nevertheless, despite his unspoken disapproval, Richard permitted our relationship to continue. Within a year, Andrew and I decided to marry. Our profound mutual love outweighed imperfect circumstances, leading us to choose a simple courthouse ceremony that reflected both our situation and desire for discretion. Andrew's parents remained absent, a reality I accepted though I understood it wasn't ideal. Despite my encouragement, Andrew remained firmly opposed to inviting them. It was during our wedding day that I finally met Amy, Andrew's sister, whom he had invited. This meeting brought unexpected comfort. Amy's charm and humor reminded me of Andrew himself, suggesting authentic family connection. Amy's presence offered me a new perspective on Andrew's family background, creating a sense of welcome I hadn't previously experienced. Following our modest ceremony, we escaped to a serene beach for our honeymoon. Surrounded by calm waters and pristine sand, we settled into a simple but cozy cottage just steps from the shore. Here, I experienced physical intimacy for the first time. Everything was new to me. I was an inexperienced young woman raised with traditional values, while Andrew, having been married before, understood these matters. Despite my initial nervousness, our first night together proved wonderfully tender. Afterward, we could barely make eye contact without blushing, that sweet, delicious embarrassment unique to newlyweds, especially meaningful for me as I discovered this dimension of adult life. The honeymoon days unfolded in an atmosphere of profound love and passionate discovery, bringing unprecedented happiness and emotional revelation. Looking back now with the clarity of hindsight, I marvel at my naivety. I never imagined that this seemingly devoted, attentive man would ultimately betray me so completely. Not even in my darkest nightmares could I have envisioned someone capable of such deception. We believe we truly know someone, don't we? Yet life sometimes delivers cruel surprises. The very man who made me feel so cherished and exceptional eventually revealed himself as someone entirely different from my perception. Early in our marriage, we moved into a small apartment in New York's Upper East Side. I had accumulated savings through my legal career, and my father generously contributed the remaining funds needed for the purchase. Andrew, by contrast, possessed limited financial resources, having divided most assets with his ex-wife during their divorce. His financial circumstances remained somewhat precarious. Though I understood that photography for Life magazine provided moderate income, this never concerned me. What truly mattered was building our life together, regardless of material considerations. As time passed, we adapted comfortably to our new living situation. Though simple, the apartment represented something preciouser: shared space. This gave me profound security and contentment. I believed I had found both my place in the world and my life's companion. The weeks following our wedding overflowed with joy as we established routines together, balancing professional obligations with personal connection. While I continued my legal career and Andrew pursued his photography, our free time became precious territory for deepening our relationship. We grew increasingly comfortable with each other, enjoying casual walks, occasional cinema outings, or quiet evenings of conversation at home. Andrew would often share his daily photographs while I recounted interesting cases. Having someone with whom to share these experiences brought unexpected richness to my previously work-centered existence. Weekends became special occasions for elaborate home-cooked meals or visits to my father. Richard seemed gradually more accepting of our marriage, occasionally even sharing light-hearted moments with Andrew. Everything appeared perfectly aligned until the evening Andrew returned home visibly troubled. "Liz, I need to discuss something important," he began, tension evident in his voice. "What is it?" I asked, my heart accelerating with concern. "It's about Amy," he explained. "She's experiencing serious difficulties. Her boyfriend has become violent, and she urgently needs safe accommodation. She's fleeing from him. He's been harassing our parents daily, making their situation untenable." Shock coursed through me. How horrible! Of course she can stay with us. "Are you certain?" Andrew asked, visible relief softening his features. "Absolutely, she's family. We support each other in crisis." The following day, Amy moved into our guest room. Andrew mentioned taking her to the police station beforehand to file a complaint against her abusive ex-boyfriend. When I saw Amy, I barely recognized the vibrant woman from our wedding. Bruises marked her face and arms, and profound exhaustion darkened her expression. "Hello, Amy," I greeted her, attempting to project warmth and optimism. "I'm deeply sorry about your situation. Please know you're completely safe here." Amy offered a faint smile. "Thank you, Liz. Your kindness means everything right now." "My dear, I couldn't possibly have anticipated how dramatically this decision to help Amy would transform our lives. I simply wanted to do what seemed right, supporting a family member during crisis. What would you have done in my position? Would you have welcomed your sister-in-law during her difficult circumstances, despite being newly married? Or would you have encouraged her to find alternative solutions?" As days progressed, I noticed increasing intimacy between Amy and Andrew. They laughed together, engaged in lengthy conversations, and frequently collaborated on cooking meals. Initially, this seemed natural. They were siblings reuniting after prolonged separation. I appreciated seeing their strong connection. Gradually, however, I began feeling like an outsider in my own home. Though Amy appeared to be recovering well from her trauma, smiling more frequently and becoming increasingly talkative, I couldn't ignore how Amy's eyes illuminated whenever Andrew entered a room. There was something distinctly different in that gaze. One evening after dinner, I decided to address my concerns directly with Andrew. Waiting until Amy retired for the night, and following an intimate moment between us, I broached the subject carefully. "Andrew," I began hesitantly, "I'm genuinely happy Amy's here and that we can support her, but—" He encouraged my continuation with that gentle manner that always melted my reservations. "Sometimes I feel somewhat excluded," I admitted. "You and Amy share such profound connection, and I wish to participate more fully. I understand your sibling history and shared experiences, but I'm your wife. I need to feel included in your life." Andrew considered this thoughtfully, running his fingers through his hair, his characteristic gesture when processing complex thoughts. "I understand completely, Liz," he acknowledged. "Amy and I have weathered numerous challenges together, especially considering her current circumstances. But you're absolutely right. I promise to ensure you never feel marginalized." The following Saturday, Andrew organized a cinema outing for the three of us. In those days, we lacked today's convenient entertainment options. No Netflix or streaming services existed. Quality films required actual theater attendance. Andrew purchased tickets for The Graduate, an immensely popular film that consistently filled theaters. Before the movie, he bought various treats, popcorn, and Coca-Cola, which represented relative novelties at that time. These simple pleasures weren't as commonly available as they are today. After the film, we returned home in high spirits. We had such a wonderful evening. We laughed continuously, discussing memorable scenes and imitating actors' distinctive mannerisms. Amy shared childhood anecdotes, recounting Andrew's youthful misadventures. I felt genuinely included, enjoying their shared humor. Momentarily, we resembled an authentic family unit, myself, Andrew, and Amy, creating harmonious connection. Yet even during this pleasant evening, I couldn't ignore Amy's furtive glances toward Andrew when she thought no one was observing, nor the distinctive way Andrew smiled in response. I attempted to dismiss these observations as imagination, reminding myself of their sibling relationship. That night, lying beside Andrew, I contemplated everything. Though wanting to believe our situation would improve and the strangeness would dissipate, my intuition signaled something amiss. If only I had known what awaited us. Then impulsively, without careful consideration, I turned toward Andrew with unexpected directness. "Andrew, Amy needs to find her own accommodation. She can't remain here indefinitely. You understand, don't you?" The moment these words escaped, I felt immediate regret settle in my stomach. I hadn't intended such bluntness, but couldn't retract what I'd said. Andrew remained silent momentarily while tension accumulated between us. Finally, he turned toward me. "Liz," Amy continues, recovering, "this seems premature for discussion." Though acknowledging his point, something within me refused to abandon the subject. "I understand that, truly, but she's been here considerable time, and I've been wondering. She isn't employed or seeking work. Shouldn't she begin establishing independence? I don't want to address this directly with her. That's your responsibility, as her brother." Andrew sighed heavily. "Let's postpone this conversation, all right? I'm extraordinarily tired." Andrew had previously been consistently attentive physically, seeking intimacy regardless of circumstance. 7 during my menstrual cycles. This aspect of our relationship had always made me feel desired and cherished. But that night, following my comments about Amy, he simply turned away, leaving me staring at the ceiling, battling conflicting emotions of guilt and confusion. Though recognizing I'd broached a sensitive topic, I couldn't suppress my concerns. Sleep eluded me that night, as countless thoughts circulated through my mind. I began suspecting Amy might be taking advantage of our hospitality, comfortably establishing herself without apparent intention of moving forward independently. The more I contemplated this possibility, the more disturbed I became. Amy had resided with us considerable time without demonstrating efforts towards self-sufficiency. Didn't she realize her presence was affecting our marriage? I simply wanted clarity. During subsequent months, my workload intensified dramatically, resulting in Andrew and Amy spending increasingly extended time together. This further heightened my suspicions. They seemed to share inexplicable connection that I couldn't comprehend, and the brief moments I spent at home were filled with mysterious whispers and abrupt silences. They appeared to harbor secrets from which I was deliberately excluded. Frequently, when I entered rooms, their conversations ceased immediately, suggesting my interruption of significant discussion. Another peculiar behavior intensified my concerns. Amy consistently used the public telephone booth near the local bakery rather than our home phone. She claimed these calls connected her with her parents, which raised immediate questions in my mind. Why not use our perfectly functional home telephone? Amy's insistence on using public facilities for these regular conversations seemed illogical and suspicious. I frequently observed Amy returning from these calls looking anxious and preoccupied. Andrew invariably inquired about these conversations, receiving merely "fine" as response before Amy changed subjects entirely. Though resisting inherent suspicion, I found these accumulating behaviors increasingly troubling. The meaningful glances exchanged between Andrew and Amy, their whispered conversations, these mysterious telephone calls all contributed to growing uneasiness. Despite attempting to rationalize these observations as misinterpretations, the persistent discomfort in my stomach wouldn't subside. Working extensive hours, I primarily saw Andrew during evenings when his physical demands distracted me from addressing the underlying situation. Before I could properly process my concerns, another night arrived, continuing the unsettling pattern. During a rare work break, I confided in my trusted friend, Samantha Jefferson. "I'm completely bewildered, Samantha. This persistent feeling haunts me constantly," I admitted while stirring my coffee absently. Samantha's expression reflected immediate concern. "What exactly troubles you, Liz?" "It's regarding Amy. She's lived with us for months now. I genuinely want to help, but something feels fundamentally wrong. I can't articulate it precisely," I explained between cautious sips of coffee. After contemplative silence, Samantha asked, "Have you discussed this with Andrew?" I nodded affirmatively. "Yes, but he dismisses my concerns as imagination. Perhaps he's right." Leaning closer, Samantha lowered her voice confidentially. "If you truly want peace of mind, I have a police contact. He could verify whether Amy actually filed any abuse report." This suggestion tempted me despite ethical reservations. "Do you think that's appropriate?" I hesitate to violate her trust. Samantha shrugged pragmatically. "This is strictly for your reassurance. If records exist, you'll confirm her truthfulness. If nothing appears, your concerns merit serious attention." Though momentarily hesitant, I eventually agreed. "Oh, my dear, the impulsive actions jealousy sometimes drives us toward. We occasionally make regrettable decisions under its influence. Let me continue this heartbreaking narrative." Several days later, Samantha approached me with unmistakable gravity in her expression. "Liz, no abuse report exists under Amy's name," she stated solemnly. I felt my heart plummet. "Are you absolutely certain?" Samantha nodded decisively, her expression grave. "My contact verified twice. Nothing exists." Feeling thrust into nightmarish reality, I returned home with racing thoughts. Though immediately wanting to confront Amy, I chose measured approach. Understanding the dangerous territory I navigated, my predominant thought remained the devastating possibility of deliberate deception. If only I'd anticipated the consequences my suspicions would unleash. That evening during dinner, I cautiously introduced the subject. "Amy," I began carefully, "I have a friend specializing in domestic violence cases. She's offered assistance should you wish to pursue legal action against your ex-boyfriend or simply discuss your experience." Amy appeared momentarily surprised. "That's extraordinarily kind, Liz, but I prefer moving forward without revisiting that painful chapter. Considerable time has passed." "Reporting such incidents remains crucial," I persisted, maintaining direct eye contact, both for your protection and potentially other women's safety. Amy visibly tensed. "I understand that perspective, but this remains my personal decision. I won't revisit those experiences." The conversation concluded there, but my suspicions intensified. During subsequent weeks, I observed their interactions with heightened attention. I noticed the meaningful glances exchanged between them, their nonverbal communication patterns, and Amy's continued mysterious phone calls always followed by agitated behavior. One afternoon, while searching for documentation in our home office, I discovered a photograph. While Andrew's photography naturally filled our home with diverse images, this particular picture immediately registered as profoundly different. This older photograph captured Amy and Andrew in distinctly non-sibling intimacy, Amy seated sideways across Andrew's lap. They appeared considerably younger, possibly teenagers. My heart pounded violently as I examined this evidence. My hands trembled holding the photograph, suddenly feeling my entire world inverting instantaneously. At that moment, all my suspicions, all those strange glances I'd observed, crystallized into horrifying coherence. Though resisting the evident truth, undeniable evidence confronted me directly. What actions could I take? How could I possibly face them with this knowledge? My dear, this marked the beginning of the end. Don't leave now, the situation is about to dramatically intensify. Life's complexities sometimes exceed our comprehension, don't they? We believe we understand people completely, yet occasionally discover shocking truths. I determined to undertake something risky, pretending to embark on business travel while actually investigating what occurred in my home during my absence. I'm not proud of this deception, but desperation drove my actions. Having formulated my plan, I informed Andrew and Amy about a supposed business trip to Chicago lasting several days. It's an essential meeting requiring my presence, I explained with forced normalcy. Andrew accepted this explanation, wishing me safe journey while dramatically claiming he might perish from missing me excessively. Amy similarly offered good wishes, though something indefinable lurked behind her expression. I responded while concealing my internal turmoil. My heartbeat accelerated with anxiety. Though recognizing my deceptive behavior, I perceived no alternative strategy. The following morning, I packed modest luggage and proceeded to the bus station. Instead of boarding any bus, however, I hired a taxi to transport me to a nearby motel. This modest establishment maintained cleanliness despite its simplicity. The proprietress, Mrs. Zoe, demonstrated exceptional kindness. Though likely noticing my agitation, she refrained from questioning my unusual circumstances. I spent that day wandering through familiar streets, meticulously planning my surprise return home. Each passing minute stretched interminably. My imagination continuously constructed scenarios potentially unfolding at home, intensifying my anxiety exponentially. Had I known what awaited my discovery, perhaps ignorance would have proven preferable. But we cannot reverse time, can we? What's done remains irrevocable, and my discoveries that night permanently altered my existence. As darkness descended, knowing Andrew typically returned from work at predictable hours, I instructed my taxi driver to stop 1 block from my residence. Proceeding cautiously on foot, I observed illuminated windows indicating their presence in the living room. With extreme stealth, I utilized my key to enter through the rear entrance. Continuing on tiptoe toward the bedroom, I confronted an unimaginable scene. Andrew and Amy lay completely naked together. Had I arrived moments earlier, I would have witnessed their intimate act itself. More shocking still, Andrew casually smoked a cigarette as though nothing extraordinary had occurred, particularly surprising since he had never smoked in my presence. The betrayal's pain overwhelmed me completely. "Your own sister!" I screamed involuntarily. Both jolted upright, frantically attempting to cover themselves. Andrew shouted my name while leaping from bed, insisting misinterpretation. "Is that so?" I responded through tears. "Because it appears precisely as I perceive it." Amy, clutching bedsheets for modesty, pleaded for explanation opportunity. "Explain?" I exclaimed incredulously. "How could you possibly justify this situation?" Andrew inhaled deeply while extinguishing his cigarette. Then came the most devastating revelation. Amy wasn't his sister at all, but rather his wife. Can you imagine hearing such words? Consider my shock upon this revelation. My dear, life sometimes demonstrates unimaginable cruelty. At that moment, I experienced complete devastation. My thoughts scattered chaotically. The photograph, their unusual closeness, their secretive behavior, everything, suddenly achieved terrible clarity. "You've deceived me completely all this time? What do you mean, your wife?" I demanded, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of betrayal. Witnessing them together in my marital bed felt like physical heart extraction. Torn between hysterical crying and immediate escape, I realized my entire world had shattered beyond recognition. They instructed me to sit. Though trembling uncontrollably, I perched on the bed's edge, awaiting whatever explanation they might attempt. Amy began speaking. "We intended full disclosure eventually, I swear, but Michael refused." "Michael?" I interrupted, profoundly confused. "Have you lost your mind? What Michael?" Then came his astonishing revelation. Looking directly at me with those seemingly familiar eyes, he stated simply, "I am Michael." "Lord Jesus," I gasped, barely breathing. "What absurdity is this? What elaborate deception! Please don't harm me, I beg you. Genuine fear overwhelmed me, facing these suddenly unfamiliar people. My mind reeled with disorientation. The man I believed was Andrew, husband now claimed different identity entirely. Nothing made sense anymore. What do you mean, you're Michael? I questioned, voice trembling fearfully. Where's Andrew? Who are you actually? He breathed deeply before responding. Liz, I recognize this is incomprehensible, but I am indeed Michael. Andrew. Andrew never existed except as fabrication. I looked toward Amy, desperately seeking explanation for this insanity. Amy merely nodded confirmation. How is this possible? Why construct such elaborate deception? I asked through childlike tears. The man calling himself Michael continued. I've been married to Amy for 7 years. I relocated here for photography work with Life magazine. That's when I encountered you, Liz, and fell desperately in love. Amy interjected. When I discovered your relationship, I initially felt shocked but gradually understood. I've accepted the situation. Men behave this way, Liz. They conduct clandestine affairs. What acceptance nonsense is this? Have you suffered head trauma? I demanded incredulously. Sharing my husband causes no distress, Amy replied with disturbing calm. His love encompasses both of us adequately. Don't you recognize this? He manages our needs, perfectly spending time with me before your return from work, then devoting nights to you. I hope you'll understand this arrangement. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Turning toward Michael, I demanded, And our marriage? How do you explain that legal commitment? He lowered his head shamefully. I arranged falsified documentation enabling our marriage, Liz. I felt as though the floor disappeared beneath me. Everything I believed had instantly evaporated. An accomplished attorney had fallen victim to elaborate deception. So our entire relationship was fabricated? Our courtship? Our marriage all based on fraudulent documents and deliberate misrepresentation? They exchanged glances, appearing suddenly lost, but this didn't diminish my anguish. Our feelings remain genuine, Liz, Michael attempted explanation. Our emotional connection represents truth. Truth? I interrupted sharply. How can anything based entirely on deception claim authenticity? And you smoke. You're truly contemptible. I'm leaving immediately, and when I return tomorrow, neither of you should remain in my home. My fear had completely subsided, recognizing this situation represented deception rather than physical danger. Rising from bed, I felt suffocating confinement in that room. I needed fresh air and mental space to process this catastrophic revelation. At that moment, I couldn't determine whether to weep uncontrollably, scream in rage, or flee immediately. Everything familiar had disintegrated within minutes, leaving me more disoriented than a blind person amid gunfire. I left home in frenzied state, proceeding directly to Samantha's residence, the only destination that occurred to my distraught mind. Thank heavens I didn't approach my father's house. I cannot imagine his potential reaction toward Michael, whatever name applies to that contemptible individual. Arriving at Samantha's home, I recall the scene vividly. Samantha, her husband, and daughter were peacefully watching The Brady Bunch when I appeared in obvious distress. Samantha immediately escorted me to the kitchen, where I recounted everything: Andrew's actual identity as Michael, Amy's true status as his wife rather than sister, their fraudulent marriage, everything. Though Samantha appeared shocked, understandably less than myself, who had directly witnessed their intimate betrayal, she recognized the criminal aspects immediately. This constitutes crime, she explained. Bigamy violates law. I hadn't even considered legal implications, being so overwhelmed by emotional betrayal and deliberate deception that criminal ramifications hadn't registered consciously. I sought Samantha's guidance, feeling completely unmoored. Samantha clasped my hand reassuringly, insisting first that I should spend that night safely with her family. Returning home remained impossible. Tomorrow we would thoughtfully determine appropriate action. Sitting in Samantha's kitchen, sipping sweet tea prepared to calm my nerves, I couldn't achieve emotional equilibrium. My entire life had disintegrated within hours. That night, lying in her guest bed, I wept until physical exhaustion prevented further tears. I mourned the love I believed genuine, the life I thought authentic, all dreams now rendered meaningless. My child, that represented the longest night of my existence, yet I remained unaware this merely initiated a cataclysmic storm. Morning brought Samantha already making telephone calls. Her exceptional criminal law expertise, similar to my father's specialization, proved invaluable, though I remained reluctant to involve my father immediately in these humiliating circumstances. Samantha outlined our legal strategy, prosecution seeking imprisonment for both Michael and Amy. Such cases fell under federal court jurisdiction rather than family court. Michael's document falsification constituted serious criminal offense, as did his bigamy. Samantha emphasized comprehensive evaluation of all details to construct strongest possible case. Our task appeared straightforward. Michael's documentation was demonstrably fraudulent, while Amy's documentation verified her legal marriage to Michael. I now understood why Amy's surname matched Michael's not through sibling relationship, but marital status. The audacity stunned me completely. We would compile comprehensive evidence, Michael's falsified documents, his authentic marriage certificate with Amy, everything demonstrating their elaborate deception. Samantha suggested pursuing witnesses, people familiar with the couple, before I entered their narrative. Immediate action was crucial before Michael and Amy potentially disappeared or destroyed evidence. Though experiencing simultaneous fear, anger, and shame, I recognized the necessity for strength and decisive action. These individuals would face consequences for their deliberate deception. Thus began the most challenging conflict of my entire existence. What I'm about to reveal seems almost beyond credibility. When initially meeting Michael, he claimed divorce status. This required verification, though I remained uncertain about its accuracy. Samantha initiated thorough investigation, and surprisingly, they confirmed this particular detail: he had indeed been legally married and subsequently divorced. This revelation astonished me, who had presumed every statement from Michael represented falsehood, yet this specific assertion proved factual. Determined to uncover the complete truth, Samantha and I decided to pursue information directly from primary sources. Imagine these two professional women boarding a bus toward the small Ohio town where Michael's former wife resided. It was quite an extraordinary journey. We entered completely unknown territory, uncertain what awaited discovery. I experienced considerable anxiety, fearing additional deceptions and disappointments, but Samantha provided steadfast support, emphasizing our need for comprehensive understanding before taking legal action. Upon reaching this small Ohio community where everyone seemed interconnected, we quickly located the ex-wife's residence through local inquiries. My curiosity barely contained itself as we approached the gate. What if she remains unaware of her divorce status? I wondered anxiously. What if this represents another elaborate fabrication? When the door opened, however, the situation intensified beyond imagination. Accompanying the woman stood a handsome young boy whose eyes immediately revealed Michael's paternity, those identical, piercing blue eyes that had initially captivated me. I estimated the child approximately 12 years old. We introduced ourselves to Melissa, who directed her son toward the backyard before inviting us inside. As Melissa began sharing her story, I felt my foundations crumbling beneath me. Melissa explained her previous marriage to Michael, which ended upon discovering his affair with Amy. According to Melissa, Michael and Amy had known each other since childhood as close friends. Upon uncovering their betrayal, she immediately expelled him and initiated divorce proceedings. I absorbed each word like physical blows. However, further revelations awaited. Soon, Melissa's mother appeared with 2 additional children. Upon introductions, Melissa casually mentioned that one girl aged 11 was also Michael's daughter, though lacking his distinctive eyes. The boy we had seen initially was 13, and similarly Michael's child. I felt physically destabilized by these revelations. Michael hadn't concealed one child, he had abandoned 2. I, believing I knew this man intimately, now confronted the magnitude of my ignorance. Melissa clarified that her youngest daughter belonged to her current marriage, though her husband was working during our visit. Examining these children, I identified Michael's features in each: the identical eyes, the characteristic smile. How could anyone abandon their children so completely? Poor Samantha attempted calming me, though such circumstances defied emotional regulation. The overwhelming information exceeded normal processing capacity. Melissa's mother regarded me with evident compassion. I suspected she had witnessed this scenario previously. Mothers remain eternally loyal. I reflected. She never abandoned her daughter throughout these trials. I found myself thinking about my father, to whom I still lacked courage to reveal these humiliating circumstances. Subsequently, I contemplated life's unpredictability, how existence can transform instantaneously. I had discovered that my supposed husband was not only already married, but maintained an entire family whose existence I hadn't suspected. Each revelation surpassed its predecessor in shock value, I emphasize. You should prepare yourself for what follows. It exceeds credibility. Melissa continued her narrative, each detail more astonishing than previous revelations. She mentioned Michael's parents living nearby and reiterated Michael and Amy's childhood connection. Then came a tragic disclosure. Amy's parents, Mary and Christopher, had perished in a nighttime house fire. They had managed to rescue 5-year-old Amy, but her 7-year-old brother Mark couldn't escape. Such heartbreaking circumstances, I murmured. My heart ached contemplating such tragedy. Melissa further explained that Michael's parents had been godparents to Amy's family and assumed guardianship following the catastrophe. Consequently, Michael and Amy grew up essentially as siblings, maintaining exceptionally close bonds. After adulthood, Michael met and married Melissa, though she consistently noticed his unusual closeness with Amy and frequently expressed concern. Michael dismissed her observations as imaginary. Eventually, Amy appeared claiming conflict with her godparents and requested temporary accommodation. Melissa, believing herself performing charitable action, agreed without hesitation. Subsequently, Melissa's mother discovered Michael and Amy in flagrantly intimate circumstances in Melissa's marital bed. When she shared this, I recalled, I was utterly scandalized. Her poor mother nearly suffered cardiac arrest from shock and required hospitalization. Melissa immediately expelled both from her home upon learning this betrayal. Their daughter Rachel was merely 2 years old at that time. I sat absorbing these revelations, genuinely uncertain how to process such extraordinary information. Michael, whom I believed my husband, possessed this elaborate history I couldn't have imagined. Amy, whom he had represented as his sister, was actually his childhood friend with whom he had betrayed Melissa. Every aspect of this narrative exceeded its predecessor in outrageous deception, I stated emphatically. I contemplated how extensively we can coexist with someone yet never truly know them. I discovered that my supposed husband maintained an entirely separate existence unknown to me. Astonishingly, this narrative continued unfolding. Melissa seemed inexhaustibly forthcoming. Melissa looked directly at me and continued, You should know, Miss Montgomery, Amy eventually became pregnant through their relationship. This news nearly toppled me physically, but Melissa continued relentlessly. Michael's parents ultimately received them into their home. These poor individuals experienced profound shock when Melissa revealed the entire situation to her former in-laws. Yet what alternatives existed? He remained their son, and they similarly cherished Amy. Accepting their relationship became inevitable. Melissa described how Michael and Amy established residence with his parents, openly acknowledged as husband and wife, following finalization of Melissa's divorce. Their marriage proceeded shortly thereafter. I never anticipated his capacity for such comprehensive betrayal, Melissa reflected sadly. He appeared genuinely devoted to me. Our relationship seemed harmonious in every aspect, including physical intimacy. I found myself thinking, this contemptible individual demonstrates insatiable tendencies. Imagine deceiving numerous individuals simultaneously, maintaining multiple relationships and families concurrently. My thoughts spiraled chaotically. Michael, whom I believed my husband, not only possessed this extensive history with Melissa, but had impregnated Amy and subsequently married her. Yet he had persuaded me that Amy was his sister. Each component of this situation exceeded rational comprehension, I emphasized. I felt transported into melodramatic television, those elaborately convoluted narratives filled with unexpected developments. I could only contemplate how completely one can be deceived. I discovered my supposed husband maintained not just one, but two separate families unknown to me. Apparently, he managed all these relationships simultaneously. Audacity. And remarkably, further revelations awaited. Melissa continued her disclosure. Melissa mentioned a daughter born to Michael and Amy. Subsequently, Amy conceived again. Imagine our expressions, I recalled. Samantha and I appeared so thoroughly shocked that my cardiovascular function seemed miraculous under such circumstances. Every statement Melissa uttered resembled physical assault. The narrative continued expanding. Melissa added, "My former mother-in-law demonstrates exceptional kindness. She regularly visits her grandchildren here." She explained that Michael's father no longer participated in these visits, though the children regularly visited their grandfather, who similarly showed genuine affection. Generally, all Michael's children maintained positive relationships despite these extraordinary circumstances. Imagine his audacity in convincing me Amy represented his sister when she actually constituted his other wife and mother to his additional children. Each revelation seemed increasingly implausible. I emphasized, "How could they reside in my home while abandoning their children?" The situation exceeded my worst imaginings. My gracious heavens! I observed Samantha beside me, witnessing her widened eyes reflecting equal astonishment. Neither knew whether laughter, tears, screaming, or immediate departure represented appropriate response to such unprecedented circumstances. Subsequently, Samantha and I shared the fraudulent marriage narrative with Melissa. "You should have witnessed her expression," I recalled. She appeared horrified, declaring Michael's behavior compulsively deceitful. Melissa and her mother Teresa offered slight consolation. "Fortunately, you discovered this deception promptly, within your first marital year, avoiding pregnancy with this contemptible individual." They suggested I possessed advantageous position, an absurd concept given my circumstances. Their conversation continued extensively before we requested Melissa's court testimony against Michael and Amy, assisting their imprisonment. She agreed immediately, adding, "I possess numerous photographs documenting their relationship. Michael consistently photographed everything since adolescence." These materials constituted substantial evidence, supplemented by divorce documentation and additional proof for judicial presentation. I experienced simultaneous relief and renewed anger relief regarding available evidence ensuring their imprisonment, anger concerning each new revelation demonstrating the magnitude of deception I had experienced. Samantha, demonstrating characteristic practicality, documented everything meticulously in her notebook: names, dates, potential evidence. Looking directly at me, she stated confidently, "Liz, we will expose their elaborate deception completely." I contemplated life's remarkable unpredictability. There I sat in a stranger's kitchen, planning legal prosecution of my supposed husband. Melissa added compassionately, "Should you require additional assistance, please contact me." Having experienced these circumstances, I understand their profound difficulty. We departed with extensive photographic and documentary evidence. Melissa guided us by foot to Michael's parents' residence nearby, merely 2 blocks distant. Indicating the house from the corner, she provided their names before departing. We announced our presence before a pleasant residence, surprisingly spacious, attractively painted, with well-maintained gardens. Michael's father, George Wilson, emerged. We introduced ourselves and initiated conversation directly at the entrance. Initially, he refrained from inviting us inside, but after we mentioned his son, he glanced anxiously around before quickly ushering us indoors. Entering the living room, we soon encountered his mother, Eleanor Wilson. There, I recalled. I identified Michael's genetic source regarding those captivating eyes. The resemblance appeared striking. The living room demonstrated meticulous organization, filled with photographic displays. Images documented Michael's entire development, some including Amy, others featuring the children. I observed everything while contemplating life's peculiar ironies. There I stood in the home of my supposed husband's parents, observing photographic evidence of his existence that had remained completely unknown to me. Michael's father, Mr. George, appeared visibly anxious. His mother, Mrs. Eleanor, demonstrating exceptional kindness, invited us to sit. Samantha and I exchanged uncertain glances, hesitant regarding appropriate introduction to such challenging conversation. How does one inform parents their son represents a pathological liar and bigamist? Eventually, I summoned courage and began. "Mr. George, Mrs. Eleanor, we've come regarding your son." The elderly man blanched noticeably. I suspected he anticipated negative disclosure. At that moment, I recalled, I experienced profound heartache. Before me stood the parents of the man who had devastated my life, yet they appeared ordinary individuals, exhibiting fear comparable to mine. We proceeded describing our recent visit with Melissa. After uninterrupted disclosure, these standing individuals collapsed into seats as if physically burdened. They alternated between nodding agreement and shaking heads in negation. My heart fractured witnessing their devastated expressions. Though recognizing the necessity, I found their distress profoundly affecting. Poor Mrs. Eleanor began pleading, "Please don't imprison my son. He couldn't endure incarceration. For divine mercy's sake." At that moment, I admit, I felt completely conflicted. I looked helplessly toward Samantha, uncertain how to proceed, and found myself similarly weeping. Watching this elderly mother's desperate supplication affected me unexpectedly profoundly. Subsequently, they confirmed Melissa's narrative and mentioned Michael's children playing nearby, expected momentarily for lunch. Imagine the situation. I marveled. There I stood, potentially moments from encountering the children belonging to the couple who had recently masqueraded as siblings within my home. I confess, I admit, candidly. Momentarily I wanted to abandon everything, depart immediately, and accept my losses. The mother's desperate pleas for her son genuinely destabilized me. Previously, handling family legal cases professionally, I consistently managed emotional regulation despite difficulty. However, experiencing my personal circumstances rendered emotional control impossible. I never anticipated such comprehensive deception. Samantha, observing my emotional condition, clasped my hand and whispered supportively, "Liz, I recognize the difficulty, but remember his actions. We cannot permit this situation without consequences." Michael's father sat in his armchair, head lowered despondently. Raising his eyes, he stated, "We anticipated eventual discovery. We attempted reasoning with him, but Michael consistently demonstrated stubborn resistance to advice." Mrs. Eleanor, through tears, added, "We love our son but acknowledge his wrongdoing. We simply cannot bear witnessing his imprisonment. He hasn't committed murder or theft. His mistake involves excessive emotional capacity." At that moment, I reflected. I confronted an impossible ethical dilemma. One perspective presented my anger and wounded feelings regarding Michael's betrayal. Conversely, I observed this family who, despite everything, maintained parental devotion. I regarded the photographs displaying these children I'd never Meathoff siblings to children I might have conceived had our marriage proven genuine. I genuinely couldn't distinguish right from wrong, I admitted. Everything I had determined, all vindictive plans, seemed disintegrating before me. How does one determine appropriate response in such circumstances? How does one choose between justice and compassion? Subsequently, they shared additional background information. Michael had relocated to pursue improved employment opportunities supporting his children. Apparently, he genuinely loved his children and demonstrated responsible fatherhood. Amy remained with his parents and the children until eventually returning tearfully, explaining necessity to join Michael. She requested they care for the children while she established residence with him, claiming intention to persuade his return. Mrs. Eleanor added, "She consistently telephoned, communicating with the children." At that moment, I recalled. Mental illumination occurred. I comprehended those mysterious telephone calls. I sat absorbing every detail while experiencing increasing emotional conflict. One perspective presented Michael as my deceiver. Alternatively, I recognized him as a father pursuing improved circumstances for his children. Samantha, beside me, squeezed my hand supportively. I believe Samantha similarly experienced the situation's emotional weight. Michael's father continued, "We recognize the impropriety of his actions, but he insisted this represented temporary arrangement until establishing opportunity to unite everyone in the metropolitan area. I examined the photographs again, observing Michael smiling alongside his children and Amy. I observed the family predating my involvement in his life. I wondered whether he had ever genuinely loved me or merely incorporated me into his strategy for achieving improved circumstances. I felt completely directionless. Everything I had planned, all my righteous anger, appeared transformed into emotional confusion. I couldn't determine appropriate response. Samantha recorded his parents' telephone number, and we departed. During our return journey, Samantha spoke continuously, though I acknowledged complete inability to comprehend these communications. My thoughts remained elsewhere. Returning home following these revelations proved extraordinarily difficult. Everything reminded me of their deception. I simultaneously wished to escape this environment and wondered about Michael and Amy's whereabouts. Both had vanished. I avoided work. My telephone rang persistently. When finally answering, Michael's voice greeted me. He requested forgiveness while stating inability to regret his actions due to loving both Amy and me deeply. "You cannot imagine his outrageous proposal," I exclaimed indignantly. With unmitigated audacity, he suggested, "Liz, I acknowledge my deception was wrong, but I genuinely love both you and Amy. I cannot choose between you. Why not attempt cohabitation? Tell me truthfully you love me, don't you? This may seem irrational now, Liz, but please consider it favorably." I found myself speechless with astonishment. This man actually proposed polyamorous cohabitation as if representing conventional arrangement. I screamed into the telephone, "Have you lost your mind, Michael? How could you imagine I'd accept such preposterous arrangement?" He continued speaking placatingly. "Consider carefully, Liz. Amy has already accepted this arrangement. We could establish expansive, harmonious family, including you, myself, Amy, and the children." My mother explained everything following my telephone call. Mother encouraged me to present this proposal requesting abandonment of legal prosecution. At that moment, I recalled, I experienced unprecedented rage. How could Amy have already acquiesced? And incorporating the children? He contemplated relocating his entire family into my residence. I couldn't tolerate additional absurdity. I terminated the call abruptly and departed immediately, proceeding directly to my father's office. Upon arrival, though my father appeared characteristically overcommitted professionally, observing my tear-stained appearance, he immediately instructed his secretary to cancel all appointments. Imagine that, I marveled. My father perpetually occupied abandoning all professional obligations for my benefit. We proceeded to his residence. I settled on the living room sofa, same furniture where I had played during childhood, and disclosed everything. I experienced profound embarrassment, I admitted, yet proceeded nevertheless. If that contemptible individual's parents supported him, certainly my father would support me during victimization. I revealed every detail meticulously: the fraudulent marriage documentation, Amy's actual status as wife rather than sister, Michael's concealed children, the absurd proposal recently communicated telephonically. My father listened attentively while his complexion progressively reddened. Upon conclusion, he remained silent momentarily. I anticipated explosive anger. Instead, he embraced me with paternal protectiveness, reminiscent of childhood storm-related fears. "My daughter," he said tenderly, "please forgive me. I should have investigated this individual more thoroughly before your marriage." I began weeping again, moved by my characteristically stern father requesting forgiveness. He continued reassuringly, "Don't worry, we'll resolve this situation. That reprehensible individual won't escape consequences." My father initiated telephone calls to numerous contacts: attorneys, law enforcement officials. Within an hour, numerous professionals were addressing the case. I observed my father's decisive action and experienced security for the first time since this upheaval began. He looked directly at me and stated with absolute conviction, "Liz, you're my daughter. No one harms you without accountability." At that moment, I reflected, I recognized my substantial support network. My father stood alongside me, as did Samantha, alongside numerous individuals prepared to assist. I contemplated life's remarkable unpredictability. There I sat, having returned to my father's home, experiencing childlike vulnerability while simultaneously recognizing necessity for strength and decisive action. Time passed before our court appearance. Confronting everyone proved challenging and unquestionably humiliating situation for me. Samantha represented me with elegant confidence. Michael and Amy appeared with public defender representation, resembling trapped rodents awaiting predatory fate. When the judge commenced speaking, I felt my heart palpitating violently. He stated with judicial formality, "Considering the presented evidence, this court finds defendants guilty of specified charges. Michael Wilson stands convicted of public document falsification, fraudulent document utilization, and bigamy. Amy Wilson stands convicted of complicity regarding public document falsification and fraudulent document utilization." When the judge concluded speaking, I recalled, I nearly lost consciousness. Samantha supported me physically while providing water. The judge continued, "Considering these crimes' gravity, each defendant's role, respective criminal histories, and comprehensive case circumstances, this court sentences Michael Wilson to 7 years incarceration and Amy Wilson to 4 years incarceration." He explained that penalties accumulated, representing combined punishment for multiple offenses. He further clarified that Amy received reduced sentence reflecting her status as accomplice rather than primary perpetrator. They possessed no effective defense against the accumulated evidence. All documentation and testimonies overwhelmingly established their guilt. Though their attorney attempted limited arguments supporting reduced sentencing, these proved ineffective. I observed Michael's imploring gaze but deliberately avoided eye contact. Nothing could ameliorate his actions. When departing court, my father embraced me reassuringly and stated, "It's completed, my daughter. Justice prevailed." I stood motionless on the courthouse steps, observing their removal in handcuffs. I experienced simultaneous relief and sadness relief regarding final resolution, sadness concerning everything that had occurred, and all lives affected by this madness. At that moment, I recalled, I recognized a chapter of my life had concluded. Overcoming these circumstances wouldn't prove simple, but at least now I could attempt reconstruction, knowing truth had emerged and justice prevailed. Following these events, I returned home experiencing such profound emptiness that physical pain resulted. I determined returning to my father's residence represented preferable option. It felt like returning to life's beginning, I explained. Single, as if nothing had occurred, since my marriage never legally existed. My father and I reduced our professional commitments and increased shared time. He treated me markedly differently than previous, demonstrating increased affection and frequent smiles. I believe this situation helped him recognize life's brevity and preciousness. We even visited my brother's family. Traveling together proved enjoyable. We utilized subway transportation. I spent significant time with my nephews. "Such delightful children," I exclaimed. Watching them playing carefree reminded me that goodness persists throughout life. I even experienced slight envy regarding my brother's circumstances. He and his wife Sarah maintained such profound connection. I recognized he represented completely different character than Michael. Despite everything, I continued seeking masculine virtue. Regarding my apartment previously shared with the man I knew as Andrew or Michael, I arranged rental occupancy. I never summoned courage to reside there again. I admitted. Every corner reminded me of deception and betrayal. The walls seemed to retain every secret I wished forgotten. Concerning my feelings toward Michael, I acknowledge extended recovery period. Even following his comprehensive betrayal and recognizing his habitual deception, I occasionally found myself contemplating him, recalling pleasant moments, shared laughter, future plans we'd discussed. Sometimes, awakening during night, momentary forgetfulness occurred before reality returned like physical assault. Recovery required considerable time, I emphasized. Extensive time passed before I could reflect on these experiences without experiencing that characteristic chest pain, that combination of anger and residual affection. But eventually, I learned living authentically again, smiling genuinely rather than pretending, making plans without fear. My father provided essential emotional support during this period. We engaged in extensive conversations, sometimes continuing until daybreak. He shared youthful experiences previously undisclosed. One day, I overheard my father's telephone conversation. He expressed pride regarding my resilience and courageous confrontation of these challenges. At that moment, I recalled, I experienced profound internal peace. After extended struggle, I had finally rediscovered my authentic self. Several years following these events, when I had reached 29, I met Peter Hamiltona, newly appointed attorney at my firm. An extraordinary individual, I described him. I experienced genuine love again, and, eventually, we married. Our union proved exceptionally fulfilling, incorporating everything marriage should represent. Peter belonged to financially advantaged family. We established residence in beautiful home dramatically different from my previous residence with Michael. This spacious house featured magnificent gardens. Sometimes I would observe our home with disbelief regarding my good fortune. Most remarkably, after many years, I successfully conceived my first child, Frank. I had reached 34 years age. Truthfully, I admitted, I believed myself incapable of conception given extended infertility. I even suspected this explained my failure to conceive with Michael. Medical supervision proved necessary throughout my pregnancy with Frank. Physicians discovered uterine cyst approximate lemon size. This explained my historical severe menstrual cramping and irregular bleeding. Suddenly, previous reproductive challenges achieved clarity. But observe divine goodness, I exclaimed. Following Frank's birth, Kathy arrived, my beloved daughter and companion. This represented genuine miracle. I scarcely believed the physician's announcement regarding my second pregnancy. Regarding grandchildren, I proudly claim 5. 3 belonged to Frank. That boy certainly demonstrated remarkable fertility. I laughed. Every visit to his wife revealed advanced pregnancy. The remaining 2 belonged to Kathy, who conceived later in life. Sometimes, I sit quietly and reflect on the astonishing unpredictability of life. There were moments when I thought I would never find true happiness or have a real family of my own. And yet, here I am with a wonderful husband, 2 children who are the greatest pride of my life, and 5 little grandchildren who warm my heart every day like tiny glowing lights. That's life, isn't it? Sometimes we're soaring high, other times we hit rock bottom. It's constantly changing, and no one can predict what lies ahead. But I believe the most important thing is to always hold on to faith in the good and trust in life's loving design. No matter what happens, things always seem to fall into place eventually, in a way we may not fully understand at first. Thank you for listening to my little story. If you enjoy calm and heartfelt reflections like this, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing more moments together.